Thanks so much, everyone, for coming out this evening, or not coming out, I should say, staying home where it's warm. We really appreciate everyone joining in for this talk. I'm Megan Searing Young, and I'm the director of the Greenbelt Museum. For those of you who are new to our programs, we're a museum here in Greenbelt, Maryland, which is one of the three experimental green towns built in 1937 as part of the New Deal. The museum's a public-private partnership operated by the City of Greenbelt and the nonprofit Friends of the Greenbelt Museum. We have a house museum. We're open on Sundays from 1 to 5. We also offer walking tours, lectures like this one, and much more. We have some great programs coming up this spring. So if you haven't already, we encourage you to sign up for our email newsletter. And you can do that via our website. We only send about one email a month, so we won't swamp your inbox. And that's a great way to stay up to date with what's going on with us, including to get news about our expansion to the home next door to the museum house at 10A Crescent. Turning to tonight, we are so pleased to share with you staff from the Norfolk Botanical Garden who are going to speak about the history of that site. Many thanks to Susan Harris, who first brought the site to our attention through her blog, Greenbelt Online. Thanks also to Nicole Moore, who's the adult outreach manager at the Botanical Garden. She helped organize the event. And we kindly ask that you hold all your questions till the end. There will be time then for Q&A and to remain muted for the duration of the talk. Turning to our speakers, we are honored to have with us Martha M. Williams, who's a retired educator. She grew up on her family farm in Southampton County in Virginia. Family farming gave her a deep appreciation for working the land. She enjoys both beautiful farms and all types of gardens. During her career as an educator, Dr. Williams served on many community service projects, including leadership on various boards. Serving on the Norfolk Botanical Garden Board of Directors provided her an opportunity to participate in the unfolding history of the garden. After hours of collaboration and research, she published the WPA Original Gardeners in May 2016. In January 2023, she published First Gardeners for Young Children. We also have with us Nathaniel Cody, who's a longtime resident of Hampton Roads. He attended Menchville High School and Virginia Commonwealth University, where he received a BS in sculpture and extended media with a minor in mass communications. While attending college, he managed two senior art shows for Virginia Commonwealth University, curating and managing over 200 plus student artworks while fundraising to fully fund all operation cost. He's currently the digital content creator for Norfolk Botanical Garden, and since college, he's explored different occupations and brings expertise in many areas of nonprofit operations, marketing, corporate relations, social media curating, community relations, project management, and interdepartmental relations. Nathaniel still finds time with all of that to be actively involved in the community and has served on multiple boards. He's on the Garden's President Council on Inclusion and Diversity Committee. So join me in welcoming both of our speakers this evening. And I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Nathaniel Cody.
Thank you so much. I really just I'm honored and appreciate one to highlight North Botanical Garden, but two, of course, have Martha Williams, who we honor her as our historian of the garden, and then myself to kind of be part of the future of the work that she has done, the workers that we're going to talk about today, and other people who have really tilled the land to really create such a beautiful space. So many people visit every year. So just to give you a little history about the garden, we have about 500,000 visitors a year. And we first were known as the Azalea Garden because of the azaleas, and Martha's going to get into that. And we have things like kids programs, adults programs. We have a tram, we have a boat because we have a man-made canal, which is a freshwater reservoir called Lake Whitehurst. So we have boat tours. We've got butterfly houses. We have everything in between, and it's 175 acres of beautiful land where people get to disconnect from the busy day to day and reconnect with nature. And we get to talk about conservation and environment, and also the story of the workers who built the land. The garden is always about remembering what first started us. And I'm going to give it over to Martha to really start talking about the true history of the garden. And then I will come back a little bit after her speech to talk about how the garden continues to celebrate and to honor the work that these workers have done. So to hand it over to Martha Williams to get us started.
Thank you very much, Nate. I would like to say good evening to everyone and welcome. Thank you for joining us virtually tonight. And would like to thank Megan and the Greenbelt Museum for the invitation and the opportunity to participate in your museum's Black History Month celebration. Of course, the Greenbelt Museum and the Norfolk Botanical Garden share a mutual history with the granting of Works Progress Administration or WPA funded projects during the Great Depression. Tonight, I would like to share with you a brief overview of the history of the beautiful Norfolk Botanical Garden and the way forward by Nate. The Great Depression during the 1930s was an extremely difficult time for the United States with a 25%, yes, 25% unemployment rate. In spite of the difficult period, however, there were many positive outcomes, such as new buildings, new communities, schools, parks, dams, airports, infrastructure improvement in cities throughout the United States. Many of the projects and programs, however, still today are in locations where the communities are unaware of their history, and I like to call them untold or hidden stories. The Norfolk Botanical Garden is an example. The history remained untold for over 60 years. The garden had its beginning in 1938 from a vision from the Norfolk City manager and the city's new director of forestry and horticulture. And research states that since the city was devastated by the high unemployment rate, there was an urgent need to put both men and women to work. And of course, there were men jobs and women jobs. The city of Norfolk applied for a number of WPA grants. The vision was to build an azalea garden and to put African American women back in the workforce. And this would bring to fruition the vision as well as earn money for the city of Norfolk. There was an enormous challenge, however, and let's see the next slide. The location that was selected was not suitable for heavy machinery. The land was simply a swamp, a dense area of land that had not been inhabited by anyone. It was soggy, filled with trees, debris, thick underbrush, swamp animals, and water. It would take months to clear and prepare for planting with very intense labor. Nevertheless, the director of the garden knew that a beautiful azalea garden could be planted, which would rival that of any existing garden in Charleston, South Carolina, which the city manager was from, as well as earn money for the city treasurer. It would be near the airport and attract visitors who came to the city as well as local residents. Okay, the next slide. As the city went about hiring, the community was very upset. There were articles that appeared in the local African American newspaper, the Norfolk Journal and Guide, and in that paper, it expressed how outraged the community was when members went to the city and also went to the regional office to complain about the type of work that was being proposed by women. Okay, the next slide. The project had articles also in the popular newspaper, which was the majority newspaper, and that reported that the city had difficulty in developing worthwhile projects for the utilization of unskilled Negro women. And the paper painted such a negative picture stating that many women had floated or drifted into the community, and they were only suitable for work in the garden or in planting or work in the soil, but not in any other type of skilled job. So the implication was that these were all unskilled uneducated women. The garden nevertheless went about hiring the ladies, and the the garden prepared transportation for the ladies. They picked them up in big trucks, open back trucks, or either in funeral limousines. The limousines were driven by, of course, the undertakers from the local funeral homes. They picked them up in the morning at 7 a.m. and they brought them home in the afternoon. They all had a half-hour lunch break. However, this was not the beginning of the workday, of course, for the ladies, because the ladies had to prepare before leaving home. They had to prepare breakfast, lunch, get their kids ready for school before they began their day. And the report stated that if they missed their ride, they had to walk to work. And that was anywhere from 5 to 6 miles, depending upon where they lived. And sometimes the ladies actually worked until dark. And the ladies were put into groups, and they were under supervision by the white men that were there to assign them different tasks each day. The original pay for the gardeners was 25 cents, or approximately $17 every 2 weeks. The work nor the pay was great, but it did put food on the table, because you can imagine during this particular time, there were just no jobs. And Norfolk had many businesses, fertilizer factory, automobile plant, and it had 9 railroads coming into the city. It had 16 steamboats coming in. So this was a time when Norfolk was very prosperous, but all of that shut down during the Great Depression. The African American community even had a bank that many people had gotten home mortgages, but all of that was lost during the Great Depression. The bank even closed. Okay. So during the Depression, the wages were low, and it could not employ everyone, but people were seeking any type of work that they could do. Because during that particular time, we were looking at a generation that really wanted to work for what they earned. They did not want a handout. So they did not want to seek relief pay. And sometimes families would stand in line for the relief pay, but by the time they got to the point where they would receive the pay, the line was shut down. And so it was not very good for their self-esteem. They didn't want that kind of handout, which they considered it. Here's a picture of the gardeners. You see them in the swamp working. You can see the thick trees there. You can see where they've cut down some of the logs, and they assigned 3 ladies. Can you imagine? They assigned 3 ladies to a tree. They were given a rope and a saw, and they had to cut down the tree, and then they had to move the branches that they had cut. And you can see this was a picture in the summer where the ladies had on dresses, because during that time, ladies did not wear pants, they wore dresses. Another element that they had to contend with, snakes. There were many snakes. There were 4 ladies who were called the snake ladies, and they would go ahead of the crew. And this is a crew of about 7 ladies. They were working on 25 acres of land at that time, and they were divided into small groups into different locations. So a snake could easily hide under a tree branch or in the thicket of the grass. And ladies would wear things, something like camphor oil or some kind of oil to keep away mosquitoes and flies and gnats and those kind of summer critters that were available. And the next slide is one of the ladies working in the winter. You can see the heavy coats. The African American newspaper continued to complain. You can see just a little snippet of the article, which says that Norfolk WPA project assigned work to women that should have been assigned to stalwart men. And it also had, or even a team of horses. And on the left-hand side, you could see where they had made progress in terms of cutting down lots of trees, and dirt was piled up, and then you can see the debris on the right of the picture. Okay, so the next one, why did the ladies do this work? And it was basically to feed their families. They didn't want to have to get a handout. They didn't want their families to starve. They wanted to be able to provide for their families in any manner that they could. They knew the work was difficult, but they were willing to do it. And even though there were complaints from the community, the ladies never really stopped working. And Harry Hopkins, who was the director of the one of the directors of the WPA programs, made that quote and felt that work was very positive for both men and women. So that's the kind of work that women had to contend with. They had to dig ditches, they had to build canals, they had to smooth rough places, they had to fill in holes, they had to move a lot of underbrush. But in spite of all that, starting in September 1938, in less than a year, they had cleared a section of trees, briars, vines, underbrush, and they had readied land for planting, using only pickaxes, hoes, shovels, and wheelbarrows. Those were the tools that they were assigned to work with. By March 1939, you can see they planted 4,000 azaleas, 2,000 rhododendron, 2,000 camellias, shrubs, bushels of daffodils, and also other kind of plants. So the ladies were very conscientious, very serious, worked hard every day. And some of them said when they went home at night, all they could do was just soak their feet in Epsom salt and try to get a little relaxation. Within less than a year, the gardeners had begun to turn the overgrown swamp into what was considered this stylish landscape. The garden did hire an architect and a landscape architect who gave them the design for the garden. It was Charles Gillette from Charlottesville, Virginia. So the work progressed very rapidly. During the first year, the women cleared 25 acres of swampland. They carried buckets of soil to fill low areas. They had cleared over a 4-year period of time, 75 acres of land. And they had built a levee for the lake. You saw the water in the background in that first picture of the workers. Well, they had to build a levee. That's Mirror Lake. That's still at the garden, very beautiful. They had to move 150 truckloads of dirt by hand, by wheelbarrow. And the first year they built 1 mile of trail, but by the time they left, they had built 12 miles of trail. And the workers continued to work until 1942. By that time, the war had started and the WPA funds had ended by 1942. So they worked from 1938 to 1942 in this backbreaking work every day. It was year-round work. And sometimes in the winter when the ladies worked, they said they had to dig ice away from the roots of the trees in order to get at the roots and dig them. So they were on their hands and knees. Some of them didn't have boots, and some didn't have gloves. They used rags and cloths to wrap those heavy iron tools that they used. And the work that they did certainly accomplished the vision that the Norfolk city manager and the director had envisioned. In 1940, traffic to the Azalea Garden, over a 4-week period of time, they saw 95,000 visitors. And the year before, there were only 15,000 visitors. So it just became a popular place. And the reports state that during that period in the spring when the azaleas were blooming, Norfolk saw the highest number of traffic jams in the state of Virginia during that particular time. And here's a picture in 1944. This was at the height of the azalea season in 1944. In 1947, this garden was so successful, the city advertising director contacted the National Geographic magazine and asked him if he would come to Norfolk and see the azalea garden that was blooming there and that was so popular in the state of Virginia. And they did, in fact, send a team of photographers and reporters. And in May 1947, the Norfolk Azalea Garden was on the cover of the National Geographic magazine with the title Nautical Norfolk Turns to Azaleas. And in 1954, the Norfolk Azalea Garden hosted the NATO Festival, the National North Atlantic Treaty Organization. The headquarters is in Norfolk, and each spring they have a meeting, and each country will bring a queen, and they have a parade, and they have floats, and they parade through the city of Norfolk, and they would go to the Norfolk Azalea Garden where they would actually have the festival and crown the queen. And the African American community could see the float and see the queens on the floats, but they could not enter the garden because it was during the period of Jim Crow, and so it was separate but equal. So they could not visit the garden at that particular time. And the Norfolk Azalea Garden, which became the Norfolk Botanical Garden, hosted the International Azalea Festival for 50 years. And this was part of the continuing story of Norfolk Botanical Garden. And after the gardeners left, they continued to grow, continued to develop, and no one knew the history of the garden. The garden received many accolades in Women's Day magazine, Southern Living, you name it. If it was involved a garden or anything dealing with horticulture, Norfolk Botanical Garden had received some kind of commendation or recommendation. But by this time, everyone was enjoying the fruits of the workers' labor and had forgotten all about, and not very many people knew who the workers were because it's not something they talked about. It was such an awful period and such awful work, they did not want to discuss it with anyone. So not very many people knew who they were. However, in 2003, a group of Ruffner Middle School students came to the Norfolk Botanical Garden because they had started a new club. And this is how we began to dig into our history. So the researchers read an article in the paper. Norfolk had just, and the state of Virginia, endured a hurricane, Hurricane Isabel. And there were 300 trees that had fallen at Norfolk Botanical Garden. Well, the students thought this fit in perfectly with their club. Their club was Problem Solvers International, and they had to find a community organization that had a problem, and they had to solve it. Should be a problem that would benefit the organization and the community at large. And they came to help clear the garden so that they could host their Garden of Lights in December, and this was October, but they were told they were too young. However, some of the students' parents knew a board member at the Norfolk Botanical Garden. And some of the students said that they had been visiting the garden since they were very young with their parents. And what they noticed at the garden was that it was not diverse. The garden population, the workforce, the attendees did not look like the community, which was 30% at the time diverse, African American, other ethnicities. And so they thought that it could be helpful if they would select a project and help the garden increase its diversity. And the garden had just completed a SWOT study the year before, and that was a complaint that there was lack of diversity at the garden. And what are you going to do about it? So the garden welcomed the young researchers and formed a diversity committee. And the diversity committee was made up of staff members, community members, and we met jointly. And the students came to one of our meetings, and they brought one of the gardeners that they had found. And the way they found the gardeners was they advertised in the paper. Let's go to the next slide, and I'll give a little bit about how they found that. The original gardeners they found when they read the report, it was a 1965 report by Frederick Hewitt, the director. And he had been the director since 1938, and he wrote a 25-page report just to give a summary of what had happened and the accomplishments of the garden. And in that report, he stated that there were 200 African American women and 20 men that were the first planters at the Norfolk Botanical Garden. And in that report also were 5 names because the other gardeners were dismissed in 1942, but 5 were hired to continue working in the garden. And so they thought that if we find the people who were original workers in the garden, perhaps it could be inspiration and motivation for African Americans to come to the garden and visit. They should have some sense of pride in what their family members did. And so they went to the city, couldn't find any records. They did go to the next slide. They did find a picture of the gardeners. They found a picture, not all 220, but you can see some men in the far background. But they found this picture and they began to advertise in the newspaper and decided that their project would be an oral history project. Well, when they advertised, they found 11 names and one original gardener. And so the students decided that they would entitle their project Digging into Repressed Times. And so they had to write up a project after doing their research for competition in the at their national meeting. Next slide. And they found one surviving gardener. And at that time, it was Miss Edna Joyce who had worked in the garden. She was the youngest person. The gardeners were from 16 years old to 54 years old. And the 54-year-old was one of the latest that was hired in 1942. And she had to go to work at 16 because her mother had passed and she had to help her aunt support her baby sister. And and she said she had not come back to the garden even when it opened to everyone, because whenever she thought about it, the pain was still there. And because it was such a dismal place, she really didn't think it was going to be very much, she said. But she did enjoy her visit, and now there's a brick in front of the Botanical Garden Visitor Center with her name on it. The next slide. The next slide is a picture of Mrs. Sally Tucker Austin. She was the one of the middle-aged gardeners there. She was a teacher before the Great Depression. She taught high school in North Carolina. She was a basketball coach, had a winning team. She was also, her son told us, the valedictorian of her class, and she was the first queen at Booker T. Washington High School when she was
Oh,
a
we knew he
senior.
kept it, but I
Mhm.
don't know why we.
So we found out by advertising and interviewing families, there was lots of information that began to come forth, and we were told that they really didn't talk about it. Mrs. Austin's grandson did not know she worked at the garden, and when someone told him, um, 40 years later, he said he didn't believe it. And he asked his uncle, and his uncle said, yes, she didn't want you to know that she did that kind of work because she was a teacher. So there was a lot of hurt and bitterness there. And some of the gardeners also, we found out when they worked at the garden, they ended up with wounds on their legs because when they built the levee, they had to wear those high boots and stand in the water. And sometimes they would go under the water, and sometimes snakes would be swimming in the water, but some ended up years later having to be treated by the public health nurse because of the severity of their wounds. The next slide, please. And at the same time, when the students were working, we had a student from a local university who was working on a master's degree, and she was interested in landscape architecture, and she wanted to use the Norfolk Botanical Garden as her research project. Well, it just turned out to be perfect timing because the students had done quite a bit of research, found former family members who knew a little history of the garden, and she combined her interests with the students. And she went to the National Historic Landmark Foundation and also the Virginia, and found out that, in fact, the first 25 miles, first 25 acres were still much as it was during the time when the gardeners built it. The azaleas at that time were anywhere from 12 to 15 feet tall, and the pines were still sheltering them as they knew they would. So Norfolk became a historical landmark because of this work that the students and the graduate student combined. Thank you. Next slide. And by this time, Norfolk Botanical Garden Board said we must do something to honor these gardeners. We've received so many accolades. The garden has been so successful, so we have to honor them in some manner. So we formed an arts committee and sent out an RFP and asked how should we honor the ladies? A memorial, a water fountain, or a sculpture? So we decided on a sculpture. And a year before the sculpture was unveiled, another gardener who refused to identify herself came forth because her family pleaded and pleaded, and she was there to unveil the sculpture of the garden. And Norfolk had 54 theme gardens and decided that it would also designate a spot as the WPA Heritage Garden. And that is a beautiful garden there with the sculpture and benches and the names of the gardeners that we have found. Of the 220, we have found so far 78 names. And next slide. And this is Mrs. Ferguson and her family. Mrs. Ferguson came to the celebration the first 2 years with just her immediate family and a few friends. And the second year that she attended after the second year, I guess it was, she came to the Botanical Garden breaking ground ceremony with 50 family members. So the pride that she was instilled with really came to fruition with her family members, helping her to celebrate her achievements. So she was really the celebrity of our garden for about 8 years. She died at 97 years old in the city of Norfolk, and she was a beautician for 50 years, and she really didn't want to talk about that past. It was just too painful. Next slide. And we continue to celebrate each year. In April or in September, there's a celebration, and the families come together, and we continue to advertise for gardener names. And each year we seem to find maybe one or two people who knew someone or had a relative who worked in the garden. So we will continue to search until we find the 220. Next slide. And then in 2010, an article was written in a British journal, the first article that was related to a gardening project outside of Great Britain. And they had a picture on the Horticus Journal, which was the first picture that ever appeared on that magazine. And I think my time is running out. We have a local artist who was inspired by the work of the gardeners, and she decided that she wanted to paint the gardeners, a painting that would be installed at the Norfolk Botanical Garden. And once you come to the Garden Visitor Center, you will find this paint by Mazel entitled The Garden Club. And the next slide. And now we have a piece of public art. The city of Norfolk got on board and it installed a sculpture, and you will see the shovel, and you can see the top of spade with a vine and roots running through it. And so you don't have to enter the garden. You can drive by the gate and you can see this sculpture that's in honor of the original planners. And the garden also awards a groundbreaking award, 3 each year at its heritage celebration, to 3 recipients who have done something unique, innovative, some kind of groundbreaking project that they've done. And so that was implemented in 2016. And then finally, Megan told you about the books that have been written. And that's a brief snippet of the history of the Norfolk Botanical Garden. There's much more, but I invite you to read, to just do a little research. But it is quite an interesting history that was hidden for a number of years. And now ask Nate to tell you where the garden is going in the future. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Martha. I always love hearing you share more of the stories. I always find something new, and these hidden stories, always surprise me. I work here, so and hearing about the past really inspires me to help with the future. And so I hope my Wi-Fi works. There we go. So North Botanical Garden, right? So Martha really went into the history. Martha also is history as well. She's helped steer the direction of diversity committee back in 2003. And so, I sit here today and it's called now the President's Council of Inclusion and Diversity. So in 2015-16, the current president at the time, called Michael Desplaines, he wanted to continue to keep this committee that advises the garden diversity. They helped with, of course, the statue, the getting the names, uncovering the history, celebrating diversity, celebrating inclusion, and making sure that the garden really truly follows its mission to be a garden for all. And he wanted to keep it, so he turned it from diversity committee into the President's Council on Inclusion and Diversity in 2016. And so here today, I sit on that committee with amazing people like Martha. Miss Mary Elizabeth Ferguson, her daughter Helen Ferguson as well sits on there. So we've got some key figures that help shape the garden's past, present, and of course the future as well. So the garden today, like I said, if you weren't here in the beginning, we are 175 acres. We are known for our azaleas. We're known for our rhododendrons. We're known for our camellias internationally, and we have a lot of other accreditations. We have about 130 workers currently at the garden, and it's continuing to grow. And we do celebrate diversity. So how do we celebrate the workers every year? Martha touched on it, but I want to let you know we call it the annual WPA Garden Heritage Celebration. That's going to happen in the end of September this year. The public gets to come. Of course, we invite descendants of the workers and we talk about their stories and we remind people about the history of these landscape architectures. So the garden recognizes them for the work, the labor that they've done as landscape architectures and horticulturalists. So we give them the proper title. They're not just workers, they are truly landscape architects. So we celebrate their work. Of course, the families get to come and then the community gets to come and we get to connect and celebrate diversity, inclusion at the garden. So if you're interested in coming and to celebrate more, you can come in September and celebrate there, or you can come in April to celebrate our azaleas and the work they've done. And so I'm just going to go in a little bit about our PCID committee. So this shows you how diverse our committee is and how we celebrate that. We've got people who are Latinx, we have people who are Filipino. Of course, we do have African American men and women like myself and all other colors between. And we help continue to advise the garden how to truly be a garden for all. And that's really our mission, and it's the garden's passion. Like Martha said, they realized that back in the early 2000s, and they continue to make sure that that is something that they push for no matter what the situation is. And so that I'm proud to be able to help them in that. And so this is just talking about, like I said, the annual WPA Garden Heritage Celebration. This was last year's celebration. So Martha talked about groundbreakers, between 2 or 3 people who are truly groundbreakers in what we call in our community. It could be someone who's old, it could somebody who's young, or has done something. And so we celebrate that. So that just shows you how full and how many people show up to this event. And it's free for people to show up. So we want to invite the community into our gates and making sure that anyone can come. And so that just gives you a snapshot of that day, but it is a beautiful program. And then it ends with people celebrating over food. If anybody knows anything, a lot of African American history is surrounded by food. It's a way that we come together to celebrate and to really connect. And so after all the speeches and you're learning about the history, we get to connect over food and really treat everyone like a family here at the garden. So it's an amazing time, an amazing experience. So I encourage you to come. And like I said, at the end of September, we'll have another one. So at the 17th anniversary. So please come if you have the chance to do so. And the committee also has really grown as far as how we continue the future. Like I said, it's really looking at how we can impact not just the garden, but also the green space. And so the committee had worked years trying to get a scholarship together. And finally, last year, it came to fruition. And we were able to honor our first ever PCID scholarship to Mrs. Jones. She is at Virginia Wesleyan University, and she was awarded $4,000 to help her because she was doing schoolwork in the green space. And so what we're trying to do is diversify the green space because we see there's a lack of diversity. And so we want to encourage students in the young generation to really find work and to find passion to working with the environment or some sort of green space. So she is our first ever awarded PCID scholarship and scholars. So we're so excited, and we're continue to look for scholars as well this year as well. So it's an annual thing. So if you know anybody, tell them to apply. They do have to be around locally, but it's something that we are super honored to be able to help with the future of diversity in the green space as well. And I'm going to talk about how myself, I continue to help the garden in the present to go to the future. So I have an art degree from Virginia Commonwealth University. I have a sculpture degree. If you didn't hear my bio, I also helped with the school's art galleries and student shows. And so I have a kind of a rough background on gallery work. And so the committee was looking for more ways to impact our community and bring more diversity to the garden. And I said, why don't we do a gallery of people of color in our local area? And they gave a young Black guy a chance. And so last year, 27 artists applied, and I had 100 art pieces of local people of color in the Hampton Roads area, from young to seasoned artists, and some people who have paintings in the White House. So the tall guy in the black and white, this is Ken Wright Sr. He is super famous, and he has artwork in the White House. So to have a mix of people and to celebrate the talent in our area is super important, and to combine it with the garden. It was truly amazing. So we do an artist reception where the community and the artists come together, and over 200 people showed up to the garden in February to celebrate and to look at the work. It was truly a magical moment, to the point where the garden adopted this event, and they wanted to make it an annual event. So this year was our second year. I had a jury show. We gave out prizes, and I had over 150 currently right now in our visitor center, 150 art pieces of people in community. It's about 39 artists. I had 50 artists apply, and it fills the spaces of the halls. It's one of the largest people of color, local people of color artist shows in the area that they've ever had. And to see the need of the community and the garden, to see it's a space for all, and for people to celebrate and to be safe and feel free to celebrate their talent, is truly amazing. And I think I am super honored to be able to create something to help inspire the present and also the future of the garden as well. So if you do have a chance, if you do come next month, which we're known for our daffodils, we have over 500 plus thousand daffodils that bloom at the garden. You can also stop by the visitor center to see over 150 local people of color artworks, from Latino to African American to also Native American and et cetera, in our walls. And then the future of the garden, we are finishing up our $54 million new construction project that we're doing at the garden, called Garden of Tomorrow. As you can see in this picture, it gives you a snapshot of this massive project. And so we are going to have a desert and tropical biome. We're going to have a skywalk, like you can see here, a new entry pavilion with the bistro. We're going to house some of the rarest species in the world, from cacti to tropical plants and anything in between. And we're trying to save these plants because what we find out is that the environment is losing these specimens day by day. And what we know is a lot of our medicine is from pharmacology, and is plants are the powerhouse to cure things like Alzheimer's or cancer. And so as these plants are dying, we're losing the cure for all these diseases. And so botanical gardens are working hard to create these safe spaces. We call them the Noah Ark, to house some of the rarest plants, and so that scientists and researchers can have a chance to do research on these plants that might have a superpower to cure something or to feed millions. And so our passion for conservation is continuing with this new project. And so this project will open in October of this year. We're super excited. So there's a lot of running around at the garden and a lot of new things happening. But if you haven't really taken a chance to look at what we're doing, visit our website, or you can visit gardenoftomorrow.com .com or .org. Sorry, you can either Google it and you can see what we're doing to impact. We're doing a lot of green building. And that means is using a lot of green initiatives, the way that we're building this garden tomorrow, and a lot of different projects we're doing for conservation as well. And the last thing I want to touch on is just showing you about the desert biome that we're going to have in addition to the tropical biome. We're not just putting in rows of plants so that you can walk around. We're going to immerse you into nature. You're going to fall in love with plants and so that you are inspired to do your own work at home. That's the beauty and goal of what we do at Norfolk Botanical Garden. We connect people to nature. And the last big thing that we added to our garden tomorrow is the Brock Environmental Education Center. We're continuing to push in our initiative of conservation. This is dedicated space for students, for colleges, for researchers to come and to learn and to know more about plants and of course water as well. We have a we have a Lake Whitehurst, which is a reservoir as well. So students have a dedicated space to learn and to learn more about conservation. And we're so excited to provide this for our community. So this is a space for colleges, students, and stuff, et cetera, can use to study and to work alongside nature and to look at the plants and the biomes and really do some dissecting as well. So this is what we have going on, and all this wouldn't have been possible without the WPA workers. And so at the WPA Memorial Garden, which is in our Mirror Lake, you can see the statue called Breaking Ground, and you can see all the names, the known names that we have, and you can celebrate them. We also are doing some video series with some of our key figures on our PCID committee. They're on YouTube and also on our Instagram, a little snapshot. We just launched one with Martha McClenny Williams. And you can learn more about these people who shape the garden, who sit on our committee today, who are doing great work around the world or locally. So if you want more information about these key figures, even myself, you can visit our YouTube channel to learn a little bit more about their personal stories and who they are and where they came from. And then you can learn about our story by visiting our website, or you guys live in Maryland. The Amtrak goes all the way down to Norfolk. Come take a trip to Norfolk Botanical Garden. We would love to have you. We'd love to have you walk around. The prettiest season, I like I say, is April when the azaleas are blooming, but you can come any time of the year where it's just a beautiful campus. And I'm always honored to work at this space. It truly brings me joy to connect people with nature. And I'm going to open this forum to questions. If anybody has any questions for us or anything, you're more than welcome to ask those. If we don't have any time, I'm not sure, but please ask away. Maybe some in the chat. Let me see. Okay, never was recorded. Okay, if we don't have any questions, like I said, please visit our website. I currently sit on the marketing team, so I know that we have information. I think we might have a question. Let me see. Nope. Yep. So you can always find us. You can always Google us as well. And we have many projects. We do student programs. Oh, we have a question. Susan, yes, go ahead.
Hi, I just wanted to, there was a wonderful, wonderful talk. Thank you so much. I had done some research and this is way more than I had been able to find online. So this has been really special. So I just want to say I visited the garden in this recent November. I was invited to a film festival nearby about plants, a whole film festival for about plants. And they took us to your garden and we got a wonderful tour by very knowledgeable staff. And then honestly, it wasn't until I got home and was researching for my article about it that I saw the website, all this fabulous historical information on the website. And of course, as a Greenbelter, I just freaked out. I was so excited. So it's been I think it's a wonderful connection that the various New Deal projects have, and yours is a very, very special one. So thanks for coming to Greenbelt, even virtually.
Yes. Yes, and I'm glad you visited our campus. And again, in November, we do have a beautiful camellias, sasanquas blooming. So I know you saw that as you were getting a tour around with our staff.
Well, one more point. I was actually asking the Les Parks, your head of horticulture, I think, what time of year he would recommend. And he suggested June because that's when you have a major hydrangea collection. And that's when they're blooming. And I could just imagine, y'all should see the pictures of these boats going through the garden down the canal. It's just, I've never, I don't think it's probably the only public garden with a canal running through it. So I said, I want to take that boat trip through the garden and see the hydrangeas in bloom. So I would say I would agree with you. Any time of the year would be a good time to visit.
Yes. So just so everyone aware, so June is a really high level for us. We have our hydrangea garden, which starts blooming. It is super famous. And we also run boat tours throughout our canal as well that sits on Lake Whitehurst. And we also have our summer butterfly house that opens as well. So you actually get to see the full life cycle of these beautiful creatures from the
Mhm.
egg to the larva to the chrysalis, and of course to the full-blown butterfly. And also we do moths as well. And we are one of 5 gardens that have a boat, a
Oh,
tram, and I think we're kind of unique in a lot of different ways. But I think we're not the only one. But if we are, give us an award, please. Uh, but yes, um, but yes. Did I have one more question? I had one more hand. Was it Mary? Did you have a question?
Actually, I did.
Yes,
I
go ahead.
visited these gardens back probably in the 1970s,
Mhm.
and I can tell it has changed a great deal. But this is a real trivia question, probably for somebody who has a great memory of the gardens. Did this garden used to have, like on the canal areas, like a pirate ship or something?
Yes, we did.
Okay.
And they used to do pirate th themed things. And so you would take it on, you would get on a boat, and there was when you come into our causeway, there was a little section to the left, and they had a pirate ship, and then we had hired actors for the summer, and they used to do pirate things, and then we had a pirate ship in the actual garden. It's now turned into a children's sand pile. But we did have pirates at the garden. People want us to bring it back, but unfortunately, that's just something we just leave in the archives of the garden.
I'm going to have my brother watch this program because he has a very vivid memory of the pirate ship.
Yes, and we have photos of the pirates as well in our archives. So the Slover Library houses all of our photos as well. So if you ever have a chance to go to Norfolk, you can go downtown to Slover Library and flip through the archives of the garden, and he might find those pirate pictures.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
There are a couple.
Also, the what really struck me though was the plants and how beautiful they were.
Gorgeous.
So
Yeah.
And there's something blooming in the garden 12 months a year. It
Yeah.
was designed so that there would be plants blooming each season of the year.
Hmm.
There's a
Over.
couple questions in the chat. I think we have time to answer those too. And if anyone has any additional questions, we can always forward them on. Can you see those
All right, so the first
by younger
question,
students?
Miss Mary Hawkins Jones, and she says, "How are local young students K through 6 encouraged to be involved with the garden?" So that's a great question. So I'll take this on. So the garden, we have different departments. We have adult programs and youth programs. And in the youth programs, we either go out to schools or we invite schools to come to us. We also have something called a Day of Nature. And what that is a program that we get funds for that we can pay for different students, K through 6 as well, even high school, to come to the garden. We cover some of the costs or maybe fully cover it, where they get to spend a day in nature, where we have programs to talk about nature, conservation, water, and all those fun things. So we have a dedicated K through 12 staff and programs that we do annually and yearly, even through the winter, to educate students and to bring schools in. So we have, I mean, over 200 schools that come to the garden a year. So we're really focused on young education. So great question. And then we have another question. We have what types of youth summer programs are available in the garden? In Brooklyn, we had the children's summer program that enabled youth to learn by doing gardening. So again, like I said, this might type onto Mary's thing is that we do have programs throughout the year, and they kind of decide what type of programs we want to kind of theme it. And so this year's theme, and it's under wraps, I can't say too much, but it's a little bit based on art and garden. Let's give you a hint. But there's tons of programs that we do. And now it's going to be where families can come. You can do it, or kids and stuff like that. We have dedicated staff to work with students. And then, of course, we have a dedicated garden called the World of Wonders, which is the WOW's Children's Garden that is dedicated for children's learning. So we have a dedicated garden. It's massive about children's learning. And so they get to learn their ABCs with different plants and other things like that. We have a swamp. We have a great plain where we grow crops and agriculture. We've got educational science. We have everything from young to, of course, middle schools, high schools to learn about gardening and or learn about nature. So we dedicate that space for that, or of course, they can explore the rest of our campus. So you can look at those programs by visiting our website or give us a call. We love a call too, and we're more than happy to kind of work with different programmers or different communities or different organizations that might want to come to the garden. So we facilitate those as well. And then, can you use instruments to, let's see here. And then, of course, and then someone said in the comments, if you're not reading, you can email the Slover Library and they can email you some of those photos. So if you really want some pirate photos or some of the Azalea Queens or anything that we have is archived, the Slover Library is going to be a great resource for you. And we partner with them to archive that. I just want to end on this. Like I said, we touched on talking about what the garden does and where they come from. We really are talking about a lot of education here at the garden. It's education first, conservation first. So we have a lot of adult programs that bring people to the space. In addition to, we do have a lot of young youth programs. But another thing that I want to talk about is that we are really a space for mental health. And during COVID, we were one of the only spaces open during COVID where people can come and connect with nature. And it really became a mental health kind of oasis for so many of our community members. And so people use us as a mental health, people with mobility issues, addition to maybe born with mental disabilities, they come to the garden. We have volunteer programs based around that as well. It's a space for all, and it's a mental health space as well. So we really truly become a resource, not only for the youth and to educate, but also a mental space for people to can disconnect and try to reconnect with nature. It's such a mental release. It helps me every day. I walk outside my office and there we go. My stress is gone. So I am honored, and the garden is honored to have this presentation about it. Martha, if you want to also wrap up with any thanks or anything like that. But again, I'm Nate Cody. I'm the Digital Content and Marketing Project Manager at Norfolk Botanical Garden. I continue to help push the garden in the present and the future of becoming more diverse and inclusive. And I continue to help and honor the workers as well. So you can always see us on our social media website. I'm gonna keep saying visit our website because I help manage that, so I know it's there. And if you have any questions, please do not be afraid to give us a call or send us an email. We're more than happy to talk to you about our history or where we're going or what we're doing now. So Martha, you want to send us off?
Well, I'd just like to say, I know there was a question about children.
Yeah.
Norfolk Public Schools has a wonderful partnership with the garden
Mm-hmm.
because each year, third graders, fourth graders, you can come to the garden in the spring and you will see school buses, school buses, school buses. And so they bring their children, and the children have an opportunity to visit the garden. And also, we have a beautiful rose garden. And Norfolk Botanical Garden, some of you may not know, was on a stamp. There was a stamp that was printed by the U.S. Postal Service, and Norfolk Botanical Garden was one of the 10 outstanding gardens in the country on that stamp. So visit the garden whenever you get a chance, visit the website, and see some of our highlights. Thank you very much. It's been an honor to be here tonight.
Thank you so much to both of you for speaking this evening. Oh, I see one last question. Sorry, Jay Davis. You there?
No, I was just applauding. That was
Oh, okay. That was applause. Okay.
Thank you.
Terrific. Yeah, I think all of us could do a virtual round of applause. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And we are always interested in gardening at the museum. We had a big exhibit several years ago called Green from the Start, History of Gardening in Greenbelt. And we are going back to some of our gardening content this spring. So April 6th is an open house, and we're offering an activity where you can come and plant a seedling in a little 4-inch pot. All supplies will be provided as long as they last, that is, or you're welcome to bring your own little pot. And then also, we will be doing a little small version of a victory garden. We've done this before on our grounds, and we're bringing it back. There's been a lot of interest about it. And then on our next talk will be in person Thursday, April 24th. It'll be an artist talk. There's a photographer who did her thesis project here in Greenbelt, and that will be here in the community center, and she'll be talking about that. So thanks again so much to our speakers this evening. I think all of us now want to hop in the car and come down and see the botanical gardens.
Yeah, welcome.
And I'm still reeling over the $54 million project. So we're that's a really impressive project. So yeah, thank you so much for this. We're so grateful. And for anyone, there was this question earlier. This talk has been recorded. It will be available on the museum's YouTube channel, and that will be linked from our website. And I don't know if you all have plans to make it available as well. I can send out a link to everyone who signed up on Eventbrite if that's of interest as well. So thanks again, and everyone stay warm.
Yes.
Evening.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you so much.